Welcome to Not Your Mother's Housing Market, the podcast where we dissect and discuss emerging trends in real estate because the 21st century market requires 21st century strategies. I'm Katie Keaton, realtor with Realty One Group Pacifica, and I am joined by
Gabbi Graves, NMLS number 2190032 with Synergy One Lending 1907235.
She has to say that
every time
yes.
to keep me out of jail.
Oh gosh, lending jail or real jail?
I mean, I think lending jail, not real jail for this one at least, but I'll
lending
get fined
jail
if
is
not.
kind of scary too.
It is, I know. I feel like a lot of lenders don't really worry about it, but I do.
So hello, we are a realtor and lender duo, and we wanted to start this podcast to tell you about our local market here in Southwest Washington and also the broader market in general, and just talk about how the market has changed because, I don't know about you, but my parents, my mom, my mother has given me lots of real estate advice. And, sometimes now as a realtor, I realize that she's wrong.
Absolutely. Or just even starting that conversation out with friends and family sometimes who have, purchased homes in the 80s, 90s. My family right now, we're looking to buy a home. And so having that conversation sometimes, this house, this is the price. They are blown away, just that alone. I think our parents sometimes think we should still be buying homes for $80,000.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
So basically, we want to start this podcast to talk about, I shouldn't have said my mom's wrong. She's a very smart woman, savvy, all that jazz. But some of the advice that we're getting from the older generations is a little outdated. Mm-hmm. So we are here to tell you about the 21st century market and how you can navigate it, whether you are a first-time home buyer, maybe you want to get into the rental market or investing, maybe you're selling your first home. Wherever you are in real estate, we want to be there as a resource for you.
Absolutely. And have some fun along the way.
Oh my gosh, have lots of fun. So today we really just want to introduce ourselves, talk about our story, how we got into real estate, our own personal stories with real estate and purchasing, and a little bit about ourselves personally.
Awesome.
Yeah. So do you want to kick us off?
Yes, absolutely.
Should we talk, let's see, let's talk a little bit about your transition into lending and kind of your story as far as that's concerned. Does that sound like a good place to start?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
So let's see here. I started out in accounting. I got into accounting at a pretty young age. My mom was an accountant and my sister was as well.
Family biz.
Yeah, I guess. And actually an actual accountant, like people who,
Crunch
reconcile
numbers.
your bank accounts, not like the modern day accountant that's on TikTok.
Yes. Family biz.
Yeah. So it's kind of, I don't know, for some reason numbers just jived that way for me. And so I decided to go that route, went to LCC, went to Western Washington to get my bachelor's, moved home after and worked for a local CPA firm, which I really enjoyed. I built some great relationships there. But I also felt like the social side of me, the extrovert side of me wasn't being met. And so I switched out of working at CPA firms into internal accounting, where I was, an on-site accountant for at one time a contracting company, a coffee company at one time. And while I enjoyed that, again, it just wasn't quite a good fit. And so after COVID, I decided to just kind of take a leap of faith and try something different. I have a friend who is now my boss, who is a lender, and kind of talked to me about what lending was about, what it's like, and kind of encouraged me that I'd be a good fit for it. So I just did some research and thought I would take a leap of faith and go for it. And I am super happy I did. Any job I've had, while I've liked them, I most of the time enjoyed them because of my coworkers, not because of the actual job. I have to say this is the first job I've had where even on a bad day, I fully enjoy doing this. I don't second guess it. I keep wanting to do this even during the slow times or the rough times. So yeah, I'm glad I made the switch.
Yeah. So honestly, that's really interesting because both of us had COVID as like the catalyst for us finally like making the leap into something else,
right?
Which I guess I did not realize.
Yeah.
So a little bit about my backstory is that also born and raised in Cowlitz County. I'm a Tootle girl. So I grew up out in Silver Lake, went to Tootle forever. And after I graduated from high school, I immediately went to UW. I was there for 2 years. I ended up coming home. I had my first child, my son, who's now 11. And, after being a stay-at-home mom with him for a little bit, I went back for my bachelor's down at WSU Vancouver. I graduated with my bachelor's in anthropology, which I love anthropology.
I did not know that about you.
Oh my gosh.
Is so random.
I am an anthropologist at heart, and while I love real estate, I so wish I was like an archaeologist out in the field, or honestly, no, what I would really do is like research.
We need to dig into this in a future podcast.
Oh my gosh.
I had no clue.
You
literally blew my mind.
If
I had to if this was like pop quiz about Katie, I would have said that you majored in
communications.
Yeah. Or business admin or marketing.
Yeah. HR.
For sure.
No, anthropologist.
Dang.
Love anthropology. So if anyone ever wants to have a conversation about that with me, I would love it. Plus, the last few years have been really interesting because a lot of people work in like global health if they're anthropologists.
Okay.
And so
very interesting. Yeah.
It's a lot about like global health. And so with all like the COVID stuff and even like Ebola beforehand was when I was in college. And so it's really interesting to be in anthropology classes during the Ebola outbreak.
See, I took one anthropology class at LCC and I enjoyed it, but it wasn't like your modern day anthropology. It was very much like, we're talking about Darwin. We're talking about, the evolution of...
Yeah. Which that's great too.
It is. It's just I didn't get the full evolved, version that you're discussing. Right. Yes. Okay, interesting.
Yeah. So honestly, fascinating. Which real estate is honestly a business of people. So the fact that anthropology is literally the study of humans. I mean, perfect major. I feel like I'm using my major every day.
That's hilarious.
So anyway, have my degree in anthropology, minor in psychology. Graduated summa cum laude. I'm diving deep right now.
I did not. Anyway, I did not.
So had my second child and I was just at home. I wasn't working. I was a stay-at-home mom. And honestly, I was just kind of bored because I am someone who likes to be like intellectually stimulated. Mm-hmm. And so my uncle owns several rentals, or quite a few rentals. My mom has a handful of rentals. And my significant other and I knew that eventually we wanted to get into having rentals. And so I honestly took my real estate classes really just so I would understand it, not even with the intent of actually becoming a realtor.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So, and at the time we were living in one of my parents' rentals, which I think is very interesting. We'll get into this later about my evolution into purchasing my first house, but that plays a role. So I lived in one of my parents' rentals, which means we were getting a really good deal on rent. So we just lived on my husband's income. And then we ended up deciding to build a house. So then our budget, went from here to here.
Right.
And so I needed to get a job.
Right.
So kind of put real estate on the back burner because I actually needed a paycheck. And I started working at a local staffing agency here in town. And it was really one of my very first jobs. And I ended up doing sales, like business developing for the staffing agency.
And that's actually how we met.
Yes. We were in a networking group together.
Yes.
Which we are still now back in the networking group together.
I know.
A different chapter that we're starting.
It's interesting. I feel like this group has a way of tying people together.
Oh my gosh.
It's like I like to call it a cult. It's not a cult,
we'll get
but
into
I
this
jokingly
too.
like to refer to it as a cult. But yes, that's how we met a long time ago.
Yes. When I worked at a staffing agency and she was an accountant.
Yes, for a contracting company in town.
Yes. So then from the staffing agency, which I did love, and I met my mentor of all mentors, shout out to Pam Whittle. I met her through the staffing agency.
That's hilarious. See, and I met John Trestle. Shout out to JT.
Her boss now, who she talked about earlier. See,
Latip does have a way of bringing people together. Mm-hmm. Yes.
I don't think it's a cult. I just think it's a very powerful business strategy.
I hope I don't get kicked out for saying that. I mean that in the most endearing way possible. Yeah. If you can mean that in an endearing way. It's just once you're Latip, you never go back.
Okay, we'll get there. Wayne, who is our producer, hi Wayne, is like, oh my gosh, girls, circle back, get back to the point of the podcast. So we will do that. So anyway, I was working in a staffing agency. I ended up transitioning to work at our local radio stations, and I was helping people with their marketing, small businesses with their marketing. I was helping them purchase radio ads and then also writing their radio ads for them and helping them with their strategy of, what they wanted to market. And I was doing that when COVID happened. So throughout this entire time, I had my real estate license. I just was not using it at all.
I didn't know that either.
Yes.
Interesting.
So I had my real estate license. I had taken the classes even before I started at the staffing agency. And it was just sitting there. And then COVID happened and I was working from home and it was really rough. I was working with small businesses, a lot of restaurants, a lot of gyms. So it was sad. Luckily, the radio station was really good at helping all of our clients and just not making them pay, but still giving them their ads and things to kind of help them. Anyway, when COVID kind of died down and the radio station said, hey, you need to come back to working in the office, I was like, I can't. I can't. I do not want to go back to the office. I'm so sorry. Like, that sounds awful. So I was like, I'm going to try real estate. I'm going to do it. So I worked simultaneously at the radio station and doing real estate for a little bit. And then after I had my first closing, which was with one of my best friends in the world, shout out to Ash McBride, I quit the radio station and started doing real estate full time. Nice. Honestly, I've kind of gone, like I floated in and out of the radio station multiple times since then when they need help. And actually right now I am the morning show host of Rocket 107, their classic rock station. So I am still affiliated. But yes, I consider real estate my absolute full-time job and I love it so much. And if you can kind of tell from that story, like there was some job hopping involved, and how I know that real estate is absolute for me is because I have no desire to look for anything else. Right. Which I was kind of a chronic job hopper, and I would start something and I was always kind of just waiting for the next step, next opportunity. And now I'm like fully settled. I'll be a realtor forever.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And you really know in a market like this, this isn't the easiest market. People aren't qualifying for what they want to qualify for or what they feel like they need to qualify for to be able to buy a house that meets their needs. Right. And I still wake up every day and I'm excited to do this job. Yes. Truly. I mean, there are moments, but that's how you know it's a good fit, is even on the bad days, it's still a fun job. Yes. And I agree with that. Going back to, you said, oh, I can't come into the office. Like, I just can't do that. It's not for lack of work. It's not that you weren't working your tail off. It's just that once you become accustomed to being able to make your own schedule, it's hard to go back from that. I love dropping my kids off at school. I love picking them up from school. I do know that comes with sacrifices. There's times that, I'm reading emails and replying back to emails after they go to bed.
Writing offers at flag football games. I've done that before.
Exactly. But I also have the flexibility to coach a sport or show up to a music recital in the middle of the day. And so absolutely, that's another thing about working in this industry that's amazing, is you get the opportunity to kind of make your own schedule. You are self-employed, for lack of a better term. And so you definitely have to make up that time other places, but the flexibility is invaluable for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, and both of us have small kids. So being able to be home is great. And I think, sometimes I used to beat myself up because I did have my real estate license for a long time prior to using it, like several years prior to using it. And so, once I was fully in real estate, I was kind of beating myself up like, oh, if I would have just started this when I first got my license, think about how far I would be. But I just don't think that's true. When I actually look back at things, I wouldn't have met my mentor. I wouldn't have met people like you. I wouldn't have met my entire network of connections that I received from the staffing agency, from the radio station, from becoming involved in the community when I did. So I think absolutely a huge reason that I've been able to be successful at real estate is because I didn't jump right into it. And for both of us, it took something to make us take that plunge. But part of that is because we had grown our confidence to a place where we could be self-employed.
I totally agree with that. Yeah. And the self-discipline too. I mean, there was a time where I probably couldn't have done this job and been able to juggle all the different things and the different hats. Because with this job comes a lot of community involvement. You know, it's not just running this business. You sit on boards, you volunteer for things, you're chairing events, and it's a slippery slope. Once you're involved in one thing, you are involved in 5 more things.
Oh gosh.
And so, you know, like a networking group, different things like that. Yeah. And so I think it all those job hops, if you will, served a purpose, helped me grow into who I can be now as a loan officer for people. You know what I mean? There's certain jobs that I've had that are strong in customer service that has helped build my compassion for my borrowers. You know, more of the nuts and bolts of numbers, obviously pouring over tax returns for years and years, that helps me be able to help those self-employed borrowers.
I forgot for a second that this was like video podcast too. So the faces I'm making are like, oh God.
No, I think that's good.
This isn't audio only. For the audio only people, I'm making some terrible faces, especially when Gabby brings up taxes.
Katie is scared of taxes.
I also don't know what to do with my hands.
2 weeks ago, she almost was hyperventilating in a paper bag because she was like, I haven't submitted my taxes yet.
Well, and then Gabby's like, girl, you're going to have to file an extension.
It's okay.
And I was like, going to cry.
Yeah, well, just file an extension. Slap a bunch of zeros on it.
I did file an extension. So yeah. It's okay.
It's okay.
So speaking of kind of getting back into things, you know, one thing that I think really serves you with your background is the fact that you were an accountant because, you know, we've spoken previously. You know, a lot of my network is self-employed people, business owners, and sometimes it's really hard for a business owner to get a loan because you have to have, you know, different what would you say? Proof of income?
Yeah, proof of income can be harder for self-employed people. So some self-employed people don't receive a paycheck or a W-2. Or even if they do, maybe their business isn't super profitable other than that W-2. And so income can be a little bit more tricky for self-employed people. It helps to kind of be able to know what you're looking at, be able to navigate those forms. So that's one advantage I really feel like I have over other maybe newer loan officers.
Yes. Yeah. So kind of jumping into, because I 100% agree. I think that there's some lenders that really stray away from that because it can be really intimidating.
For sure.
And
it can be intimidating for me even. I mean,
But yeah, so having someone that knows how to do that type of loan is huge, I think.
Yeah.
So, okay, we've kind of talked about our background as far as how we got into the field that we're in. Do we want to talk about our like own personal experiences with house purchasing?
Sure.
Okay. Do you want me to go first or do you want to go first?
I'll go first. I feel like my experience is...
I'm much more long-winded, is what she's saying.
No.
Her experience, she'll get through faster, and I'll be talking for 45 minutes.
No, I wasn't going to say that you're long-winded. My experience was a little more cut and dry compared to yours, though, because mine was an existing stick-built home. Okay. Where you built your home, correct? So... For me, my transaction took, 30 days, maybe a little bit less. I got pre-approved first, mainly because I was in this business networking group. And so I had been trained by John to get pre-approved first and then go talk to my realtor. And so for me, it was pretty cut and dry. I also, when we bought, it was in... 2017. Okay. So it was a little bit of a different time as far as prices of homes.
So you probably got a good deal.
Yes, it was a good deal.
Was it a buyer's market basically still? It was starting to turn.
It was definitely starting to be.
2016 was still like more buyer's market.
So in 2017, it was more of a market where you had tons of showings right away within the first few days. And there was multiple offers. Houses were going off the market quickly, especially in this price point. The price point I was looking at was like 200,000.
So I still say that sellers, but 200,000.
But it was right where that same home would probably sell for, maybe not, but yeah, significantly more. And so
honestly, probably.
Yeah.
Close to 4. Anyway, go on.
Yeah. So it just, it was, for me, it felt like a very easy, smooth transaction. But at the same time, I feel like I kind of had my head in the sand. There was a lot of things that I wasn't I would have asked a lot more questions now. I would have asked a lot more questions about the home inspection. I would have asked a lot more questions about buying down rate. I would have asked a lot more questions about the seller possibly paying for that rate buy down or for paying other closing costs. And those are all things I just didn't think about asking.
Right.
And I kind of was like put in a path and then just set down that path. And I didn't feel like I necessarily came out of the transaction learning much more than what I had to begin with. And so that's something that I really try to work with my borrowers. I want them to leave this feeling like they learned something, that they learned more than one thing, that they came out of the transaction smarter, they understand real estate a little bit better, because I want them to be interested in making that next transaction. Right. And it might have been more me. I don't think it was my agent or my loan officer. I think I just kind of had my blinders on.
Well, you're a first-time home buyer.
Yeah. So I really try to take my time with my first-time home buyers and really explain each step of the process with them, because I don't want them to look back and feel like, what even happened?
Right.
You know?
Which I think happens.
And I think it does.
It happens a lot.
And that's you know, and not that it was a bad thing. It was a smooth transaction, a good purchase. I would make the same choice again. Solid house. I hope that now that I am a loan officer, I do hope that I am trying to have people leave the transaction and not feel like they were a little blacked out during the process.
Honestly, that is a great way to describe it. It's like, oh my gosh, I just blacked out and then I bought a house. Yeah. Like, I don't even know. Okay. You cannot tell me if you want to, because I did not clear this question with her before we started. Okay, so what did you get your house for? Like, what are the numbers? What were the numbers on it?
I know that we bought it for $200,000 even.
Okay. What was your rate?
I honestly do not remember. To tell you the truth, I have a rough idea. It is lower than what rates are now. I can say that. I only lived in the house for 9 months after purchasing it and then moved. And so I don't recall off the top of my head. Again, transition time. So not really something I was focusing on. So I can't tell you the nuts and bolts. Actually, I could find out though.
Okay. Might be interesting. So
I could pull the numbers.
So you no longer own that home. So you are currently a renter.
I am, yes.
Okay. So tell us just a little bit your headspace of because I know you want to buy a house, correct?
Yes.
So what, can I ask you that? Is that okay to ask?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So what is your headspace as far as moving out of the lender side? I mean, obviously keep your lender perspective, but moving out of the lender side a little bit more into the personal side, what are your thoughts? What is going through your head as a potential home buyer right now?
Katie, that is such a loaded question. So you want me to take off my lender hat and put on my home buyer hat?
You can tilt your lender hat to the side or hold it in your hand. Don't set it on the table. Don't throw it into the ocean. Right. Keep your lender hat nearby.
Okay. So I will be vulnerable and I'll be completely honest because that's
the point of the podcast.
Well, and not just the podcast, but that's who I am as a person and who I am as a lender. I don't fib. I don't sugarcoat things. I tell you how it is, and we're going to figure out a way to get to your goal regardless. So how I feel as a potential home buyer right now, I feel like somewhat of a first-time home buyer. Okay. So my fiance was a previous homeowner as well. Both of us, are renters now because we had a transition in our life. We both got divorced. And so we both somewhat feel like first-time homebuyers because we've been renting for a while. And as a lot of people know, divorces are expensive. They take time. It's not exactly something that, you leave the situation with a big stack of cash or something that. So we feel like first-time homebuyers in the sense that we are saving up down payment, or if not down payment, we're saving up those closing costs with kids that we're putting through sports and buying endless groceries and school clothes for. So sometimes it feels very daunting, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
We are a blended family. So we're a family of 6. We have 4 kids between the 2 of us.
Right.
And so it feels daunting, to tell you the truth. The prices of homes are astronomically higher than what they were when I purchased in 2017, which doesn't feel like that long ago, 5 years, 6 years ago.
Yeah.
But the homes that we're looking for, 4-bedroom, 2-bath, the prices of those are so much higher. Even though, we're not looking for a turnkey home, we know that we're going to have to renovate it top to bottom probably.
Which the 70s stuff is coming back in, 60s, 70s. So like just because you're looking at a house and it's like 60s, 70s, even if it has wood paneling, leave it alone for a few years. I'm telling you this, that is coming back. So this is just a little side note. Just a little side note. You do not turn everything gray. I have a gray house. I regret it so bad.
That house I bought, I painted everything inside gray.
Yes,
and
don't.
It's
out. It's out, you guys. Wood paneling is coming back. I'm speaking directly to you in the camera.
That far.
It is.
I wouldn't go that far.
I will tell
gray
you,
is
in
out.
the next 5 years, you will see wood paneling, people purchasing wood paneling to put in their house. I swear to God. It's going to have a different name. It's going to be rebranded.
It's going to have a different name.
I'm telling you.
True.
They call it Tambour. It's one of the rebrands.
Oh.
I am telling you now. So if you buy a house,
people put
50s, 60s, 70s.
On the walls.
We're not doing that.
No. I know. But you know what I mean? Like the fake wood.
Yes. It's coming back. So buy a house with like 50s, 60s stuff in it and then just sit on it for a little bit and you won't have to remodel
it's just
it.
A whole vibe.
I'm just saying.
Okay. All right.
I'm just saying.
Thank you.
You know what else has come back? This is total side note. Ballet flats. And I'm so happy because for a while it was like, girl, they're back. I'm wearing them today.
Okay, they're cute, but let's be honest.
No, they were out for a little bit, but
they
back
hurt your feet and they make your feet stink. That's not. No, they're not. That's not where it's at. They're cute. I'm glad I can find them at stores now.
Yeah,
I'll give you that.
Like okay, the low waisted jeans. I'm sad those are back. Yeah, ballet flats. Thrilled.
Yeah, low waisted jeans are for people that haven't had children or don't eat carbs.
Yeah. Okay, so anyway, so you're looking for a 4-bedroom, 2-bath house, something like that.
So it
probably
seems
know
daunting.
You're going to have to remodel. We're getting back on track. Wayne, we're back on track. I brought us back onto the track. I took us off the track. We're back on. Okay.
So it seems daunting, but like you said, just tilting that lender hat. I also know that when it comes to building long-term wealth for my family, giving my family more opportunities where I can leverage equity in my home to be able to, put a kid through college, maybe start a small business, whatever, live in the home for 5 years, sell it, buy a larger home, whatever that is. I know that home ownership is the biggest way to start personal wealth. And so even though it seems daunting, it is absolutely our number one goal. And personally for me, interest rates don't scare me away because I know that I can refinance into a lower rate later. So that doesn't bother me. If anything, it is a little bit more of the price of the homes. That scares me. And I think that's what scares a lot of people that I talk to tell you the truth. But it's not keeping me out of the running. It's definitely not. It's making me pause and want to be more prepared. So I definitely am not trying to go in and ask the seller to cover all my closing. I'm trying to come in and be wildly prepared so that I can win the offer that I write.
Okay.
So it's making me slower to take the jump. I would probably be doing it right now instead of summertime.
Okay.
If it wasn't for, wanting to make sure every single duck is in a row first.
It's also hard for Gabby to buy a house because she knows so many realtors that it's going to be really hard for her to pick one.
I do not know what I'm going to do. I genuinely, do we have an email? We have an email, right?
Yeah.
Somebody give me advice on what to do because I can't use like anyone, not even Katie. Like I'm going to upset and hurt somebody's feelings. Yeah. So just if you're watching this, like, I'm sorry. It's for my kids. Like, don't hate me.
There's no hard feelings. I feel bad for a lender who wants to buy a house because every realtor in town's like, well, obviously.
I know.
I'm your realtor.
I don't even know what to do other than, I have 4 kids. They'll all buy homes with one of you. Like,
there you go.
We can take turns.
We'll dole it out. Okay, so I think that's very interesting. Very, very interesting. Loved that. Loved that. So
yes. What about you?
Okay. Long-winded Sally over here.
I'm just feeling shy and quiet. I'll warm up.
Long-winded Lucy.
Give me a couple episodes and you'll have to rein me in. Just
I'm like, where do I begin? I was bored.
Before I was born, my parents were born.
So true. And my grandparents before that. Okay, so start for me. I mentioned that my parents have some rentals. So my significant other and I, had our kids young. I was 20 when I had my son. And after he was born, we just lived in this little tiny apartment and we rented and we had roommates and like a 2-bedroom and it was fine. And they moved out and we were, whatever. So this was back in 2011. So it was definitely a buyer's market. There were still a lot of foreclosures on the market. There were still a lot of really affordable houses on the market.
Yes.
And we actually were looking at one. It was like $120,000 and we were going to need a cosigner, but we really thought about doing that. Prior to that happening, and it was a small house. It was like 900 square feet probably, but 100% we could have fit. Maybe 1,100 square feet. Anyway, prior to us going down that avenue, my mom purchased this house in Kelso. Gigantic house, 3,400 square feet.
Wow.
Huge. 3 stories, monstrous house. It had been vacant for like 2 years. There were people that had been squatting in the basement, but they were gone. There was a deck.
I would hope so.
Yes.
She buys the house with the squatters.
I wouldn't put it past her. There was a deck that was like
amendment is that?
Falling. I'm not sure.
Sorry. Continue.
There was a deck that was like falling off the side. And because of that deck, you could not get financing on the house.
Oh, okay. Yep.
So she did purchase it as a foreclosure. She got it for, or maybe a short sale. Either way, she got it for $50,000. Yes. And they purchased it with the idea that we would live in the house.
Okay.
I was a stay-at-home mom. I did go to school, but really I was a stay-at-home mom. And my mom is really passionate about people being stay-at-home moms. She was really happy to give me that gift of being able to be a stay-at-home mom, which awesome. I will like forever, ever, ever, ever be grateful for that time that I had. I'm going to cry.
That's anyway, awesome. That's a huge gift.
It was a huge gift. But one thing that was kind of what's the word? There were cons to it. So we lived in that rental and we paid way under market value for that rental. Mm-hmm. So I was able to stay home. I was able to go to school. We lived on my husband's income. But then when it was like, okay, our son's 6 years old. We want to move him to a different school district. We want to be back in Silver Lake Tootle. We want him to go to school there. Yeah. We're ready to transition. We're ready to own our own house. Are we going to buy? Are we going to build? What are we going to do? We didn't have any equity.
Right.
Which we would have made massive amounts of equity if we had purchased that house for $120,000.
Right.
And then we were selling that home, 6 years later, we would have had a huge amount of equity to use towards something else. We didn't have that, which obviously the luxury of being able to stay home was great, but we also were young. We didn't save any of it.
Right.
You know what I mean? So we kind of walked out of that situation where I was like, oh, dang, if we would have been paying towards a house, we would be on our second home now and have a large sum of money to put towards that second house.
Going back to that daunting thing that we were discussing earlier.
Yes.
But you can't kick yourself for...
No, it's fine. But it's just an interesting byproduct because at the same time that we were thinking about moving, a lot of our friends had kids similar ages to us and they were all, it was like a mass exodus from town. We're all moving back to Tootle at the same time.
Oh, okay.
A bunch of us at the same time. Well, they all had purchased their first homes. Mm-hmm. So they were all building their second home, building their second home that were much nicer.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And so it was interesting just to see the difference because we had been renting and then, building that wealth. We were not building any equity while we were renting from my mom. So just kind of interesting there. But anyway, my parents, again, love them so much, like a spoiled brat. They gave me an acre of property to build on.
Awesome.
So my parents owned 10 acres in Silver Lake and it was perfect. There was a little parcel that they had bought by itself that was adjoined. And long time ago, like in the 90s, probably for like $10,000, you know, whatever. Anyway, so it was already parceled off and everything. So I was ready to build on.
Perfect.
So we were really going back and forth between do we build or do we buy? And it's so funny because my uncle, who I mentioned has rentals, he was calling me and he's like, Katie, do not buy or build a house right now. The market is going to crash. The market is going to crash any second. Do not do it. And this is in like 2017.
Okay.
So when you were buying a house for $200,000,
yep.
He's like,
and I was told something similar.
Yes.
I was told by a good friend at the time who was a contractor. Basically, we were buying for around $200 a square foot. The house was barely over 1,000 square feet. And he was like, you should not buy a home for $200 a square foot. You'll never make your money back. Yes. Which is funny to look at now what homes are selling for a square foot. What's a good estimate you would say?
Oh, gosh, I don't know.
Depends on the home, of course.
Yeah, but depends on the home. Like, I can't even.
Are not unseen.
No. Not unheard of at all.
No.
So yeah, my uncle was really, really trying to talk us out of it, like hard trying to talk us out of it. And we did obviously end up going the building route, but oh my gosh. So our house got completed I think we moved in December of 2018.
Okay.
Maybe even December of 2019. So 2018.
Okay.
December of 2018. And oh my gosh. So we all said and done, we did pay out of pocket for our land clearing, and we paid out of pocket for our septic and our well, I think. So none of that was included in my loan. But, we ended up really having a loan amount of $300,000, where it's phenomenal. My house now, on an acre in Silver Lake, a 1,800 square foot house.
Right.
Oh my gosh, thank goodness that I did not listen when they said do not buy or build.
Right.
And I think actually our interest rate, we did have a construction loan, so they're a little bit higher. So it was high 4s. Mm-hmm. We did refinance down, but not nearly to as low as I could have, but we're mid 3s.
And I want to say that we were low 4s when we purchased, if I remember correctly. Yeah. But
so that would make sense because we were high 4s and it's a little bit higher when you do construction. So it makes sense for you to be low 4s.
Yeah.
We did refinance, like I said. So we're mid 3s, but we couldn't refinance when it was down in the 2s because I hadn't been a realtor long enough.
Those darn employment verifications.
I know.
Get you every time.
Yes. But kind of like how you have a little bit of insight into people that are trying to get a loan when they are self-employed. Right. I do have a little bit of insight into people who are working with construction loans. Right. So some realtors are kind of afraid of construction loans in that process because it's okay, well, do we buy the land separately and then regroup after and, all that stuff. So I do have more insight into how to navigate through a construction loan. And actually I had just finished my real estate classes when we were going through the loan process.
So you probably learned a lot off of that.
I learned so much. And it was crazy because like you said, you went in blind, and thank goodness I didn't. It was so interesting to me to read all the loan documents because even though I'm not a lender, you still learn a lot of that stuff in the real estate classes. You never use it. You can't give advice. They teach you so much in the real estate classes. And they're but never give advice on this or you will go to jail. Real estate jail.
Exactly.
Real estate jail. So I'm why did I just learn all that? But whatever. It really did help me. And, it was we were getting ready to sign our final settlement statement. And you know how they have the breakdown of every single mortgage payment that you're ever going to make?
Yes.
Okay. So
the amortization schedule.
Yes. The amortization schedule is the scariest thing when you are, is it not? Especially because
you're asking the wrong person because
I love amortization.
Well, because before doing loans, amortization schedules are just things that, we have depreciation schedules, right? Okay. Like a business would buy a tractor, we're going to depreciate it. So to me, it's just a piece of paper with a bunch of numbers.
Okay, first of all, it's 15 pieces of paper because it lists out every single payment you are ever going to make for 30 years.
And how much of that payment is interest and how much of that payment is principal, which in the beginning, the vast majority of your payment is interest. Yeah.
So my husband was straight up about to back out when he saw the amortization schedule. He's after 5 years, we're only going to have paid off $5,000 of our loan. This is not right. They're there is something wrong. We are getting taken advantage of. Like, this is not okay. Which, when you are building a lot of the time, like, we had no realtor involved.
Right.
So we didn't have anyone to be like, no,
this is normal. This is just mathematics.
But thank goodness I had gone through the classes, because I was the one that was like, no,
right.
This is normal. Everything's going to be fine. Like, we're not getting taken advantage of. It's okay.
Right.
So thank goodness, because, oh my gosh.
Could you imagine backing away from the closing table after building a house?
Well, no, this was like before we started the process.
Oh, okay.
This is like we got our loan before we broke ground. Okay. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So we weren't going to walk away from a built house. But still, he was like freaking out. I remember it like it was yesterday. I remember where we were sitting. I remember like the conversation, because I was like, no, stop, calm down. So glad that I was taking my real estate classes at the time, because otherwise I would have had no idea either.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And that's something that does excite me for the future, going through that process again. I am looking forward to it. And in fact, I don't know, just I feel like...
Can you be your own lender?
I cannot.
Oh.
I cannot. No. No.
So not only does she have to pick a realtor, but she has to pick a lender as well.
I do.
Oh my God.
That's a little easier. I'm not going to that's a little easier. Obviously, I'm going to go, to John. But yes.
Oh, interesting. Well, okay. So we've talked about our previous, like how we got into the real estate industry. We talked about our personal experiences with purchasing. What did we do it all, Wayne?
I think that's it. Wayne,
he's giving us a thumbs up. Right. It looks like we're good. So, okay, let's finish.
Intro episode.
Yeah, let's finish off though with kind of like our vision of what we see this podcast as being.
Okay.
So.
Gosh, you put me on the spot here.
Oh my gosh, we didn't talk about this before either.
You go first. Okay.
So my vision of it is a place where we come, and yes, we'll have topics prepared. We want to talk about the local market here in Southwest Washington. Also talk about news that comes out globally, big headlines, and kind of dissecting them from people that are actually like boots on the ground, and not only dissecting them as like, okay, what part of this is sensationalized and what part of this is factual, but then also being able to say, what does this mean for our area?
How is this going to affect how you selling your home right now or looking to buy a home right now?
So I definitely see the podcast as something like that, but I also see the podcast as a place where we can kind of puzzle through things together. It's not all going to be scripted. It's going to be like, okay, this is the topic at hand and we're getting into it. And this is also an organic conversation between the two of us where maybe we come to new realizations throughout the podcast.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I agree.
So that's kind of my vision.
I like that.
Yeah.
My vision is very similar. I think that my vision is to be kind of, I don't want to say hyper local, but hyper local. I want us to talk to people in the industry that are local, that our listeners might know who they are.
Yeah.
I would like us to even have business owners as guests and talk to them about what their transactions are like. A lot of business owners, they'll do commercial purchases as well, maybe investment purchases, and they use different loan types to access that. So I think that us talking to local community leaders, business owners, people you may know.
Maybe do you want to be on the podcast?
We're talking to you, Wayne. No, I'm just kidding.
No, we're talking to the viewer, Wayne, but also you. Are you a homeowner, Wayne? No? Okay. Oh, interesting.
You're about to be. But I think that doing it hyper local so that people can really take an interest in who we're interviewing, what we're talking about, and just to have fun, talk about things that maybe aren't about real estate sometimes. Maybe we're just going to, I don't know, complain about
it's gonna be fun too.
Youth sports for a moment.
That's all we do when we are not on the podcast is complain about youth sports in a loving way. We love youth sports.
We love youth sports,
but,
yes.
Oh my gosh.
Sometimes you just have to.
The politics of youth sports are insane.
Yes.
So anyway, I think that's good. I think that's very good. Okay.
It'll be a good time.
It'll be a good time. So please, this was our first episode. It was much more, just about ourselves personal, but we are going to get into the meat and the potatoes of the real estate market. So please join us next time. We will have a new episode every 2 weeks. So bi-monthly episodes. And thank you so much for listening to Not Your Mother's Housing Market. Feel free to follow us on Facebook at Not Your Mother's Housing Market. We also have an Instagram, Not Your Mother's Housing Market. And And we have an email address. So if you have any questions or if you want to write in for any reason, not your mother. I said it one too many times. Not your mother's housing market at gmail.com.
Perfect.
And we will see you next time.
Yes. And wait, are we streaming on Spotify?
We'll get there.
Apple, all those things. We don't know yet.
And on YouTube.
Okay.
And follow us on Facebook because it'll be there too.
Awesome.
Yeah, all the places. Thank you so much. And we will see you next time on another episode of Not Your Mother's Housing Market.